hope you'll enjoy it, and we'll turn it over to Rich.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Thanks, and I value our friendship dearly. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about leadership. I'm excited that there's this many young people that value leadership and want to be better leaders. Because in our society today, I think we're lacking leadership. And so you got a great opportunity, man, to lead. Basically, what is leadership? What is leadership? It's one word: influence. One word. John Maxwell said it a long time ago. He's an author. If you haven't read him, you probably should. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership would be a great book for all of you to read. It's timeless. And John Maxwell is a master in training up leaders. But he said what leadership is in a nutshell is influence. Influence. So we're all leading to a degree based on the circle that we're in with the people that we're surrounded by. We're all leading to a degree. Okay, you can either be leading them forward or backwards, but you're having influence with that circle. Okay, some people get a bigger platform to have a bigger circle and more influence. The more influence you have, the more you're leading. Okay, so I want to talk to you today about leadership. First thing that I know for good leaders, and I've experienced this myself, I've had the privilege of being at Ball State nearly 20 years now, and also 10 years at the University of Michigan. And through my experiences, I've been around more leaders than I probably deserve. And basically, I'm a culmination of so many different people that breathed into me. And that's what will happen in your life as well. We're all those people that have influenced us in a positive way, add value to our lives, and then we have a chance to impact others because of that. That's why I chose to become a coach. And so I'm watching this in front of me right now. Good leaders, and I learned this from myself, you have to cast a vision, so you got to get people to buy into your vision. You have to be clear on your vision. You have to cast it. And you got to create buy-in. So I'm watching it before my eyes with my beloved Detroit Lions. Okay, so I know some of you may love sports, some of you may not, but nevertheless, through sports, you can learn a lot about leadership. And for the longest time, so I'm 59 years old, and when I came out of the womb, I was a Detroit Lions fan. And unfortunately for me, 59 years later, we've never won anything. And this is the first chance that we have that if we upset the San Francisco 49ers, we'll actually make the Super Bowl. But I've been a loyal fan, as most Detroiters are, they're very loyal to their team. So we've suffered through a lot. And the reason why we suffered through a lot is we had very poor leadership at the top. So for so many years, the fans would cry out because they knew it was just poor. We hired poor people. We didn't surround them with other good people. And the city suffered for it. Now, this is how quickly it flips. 3 years ago, the Ford family, Ford Motor Company, and they own Ford Field and the Detroit Lions. And they hired the daughter to run the organization, Sheila Hemp Ford. You'll be hearing more about it, especially if the Lions upset the 49ers, and you'll hear a lot about her. But if you study her, everybody was kind of like shocked that they put her in charge for whatever reason. And lo and behold, she's proven already to be a very smart leader. And what she did, smart leaders, what they do is they hire really good people around them. So instead of her being a hands-on like Jerry Jones is of the Cowboys, and for 29 years now, I think it's 29 years I thought I heard, I could be wrong, but I don't think they've been in the Super Bowl it's been a long time. And sometimes you get too hands-on and you don't let your people do their thing. Sheila Hemp Ford hired Brad Holmes to be the general manager. Brad came from the LA Rams. Brad is a quiet leader. He sits in the backdrop. and he hired Dan Campbell, who's at the forefront. And if you've been paying attention, Dan's getting a lot of publicity because he's very, what you see is what you get. He's genuine. He's extremely hardworking. He looks for people with grit. He wants everything to be earned and nothing handed to any of his players. So he works very closely with Brad Holmes, the general manager, and they built a roster of players that a lot of other teams in the draft analysts say that should have been picked lower than when the Lions picked them. But the Lions picked these people because they identified talent that fit into their mantra. And their mantra is gritty players, and a lot of them from winners. So they're proven winners who are gritty. So there might have had other people on the draft boards that were higher, but they wanted character. So if you want to be a really strong leader, and we don't see this in the political realm right now, unfortunately. We don't see a lot of integrity because there's, for both parties, regardless of where you're from, we just don't see a lot of integrity in today's society. But when you do see integrity, it carries a lot of weight. When people do the right thing, it carries a lot of weight. So really strong leaders get recognized and get a bigger platform when they're people of integrity. So anyway, Dan Campbell comes out and he cast this vision for the Lions. And he basically said, point blank, we're going to build a winner and a sustainable winner. And I was at the Lions game, I had the privilege, this is how diehard that Coach Maloney is. I paid a lot of money to go see the Lions play last Sunday because I've waited 59 years as a loyal. I've been through 0-16 with these guys and still watched every Sunday the games that they were 0-16. But Dan Campbell has the city rocking, and the beauty of it is because of his vision and the people that he's recruited and surrounded himself with, the team exemplifies the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit is what a hard-working class people. They had auto jobs, majority of them, and they punched their clock at 8 or 9 in the morning and went to 5 or 6 in the evening. And that's the majority of the people in the area. Now of course there's other jobs, of course, but the general heart and soul of the city of Detroit and the surrounding suburbs, so grit fits perfectly in our mantra. Okay, so good leaders cast a vision and get people to buy in, and now he's got the whole city buying in, and that place is rocking. And when you watch in San Francisco, even though it's clear across the country, there'll be a lot of Honolulu blue in the stands. And if my team wasn't practicing, I might have been there myself. Honestly, that's how diehard. So, and when you see good leadership, it's really enjoyable because they impact people in a positive way. And they're impacting our city, regardless of whether they win or lose. The organization is being run at a high level now. Okay. So number one, cast a vision and have a dream for your vision, and then you got to sell it. Number two, I had already mentioned this is surround yourself with good people. Okay. I can tell you in my career, I've been very fortunate to, the 29 years I've had the privilege of coaching, 27 of them have been winning seasons. And I don't say that in braggadocious, but I say that because I've been able to surround myself with really, really good people. And then, with that being said, we've been able to identify talent in high character, just like the Lions have been doing. I've been doing this for a long, long time. So I look for young men who have a skill set, but have a passion and a grit to them and a dream. And then fortunately, more often than not, we've been able to mold that together and have some success on the field and in the classroom and in the community. And so, something we're very, very proud of. To be a good leader, you have to have a great attitude. You have to have a great attitude because everybody's watching you. They're watching what you do on and off the field. They're watching how you conduct yourself when you're talking to your team. They're watching how you do your business, period. And so a good attitude, I got this quote, I like reading this quote, and I do it in almost every speech that I do on leadership, period. And it's about an attitude, and you can find it online. The author of the quote is Chuck Swindoll. And here it is: the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. Attitude will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing about attitude is what will we embrace for that day? We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that's our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. So good leaders have good attitudes. There's things that are going to happen that, depending on your attitude, are going to determine your outcome. Okay, I'm going to take you back, and this is off, I just got a thought. Back to 9/11. The country was in disarray. A lot of uncertainty was going on. And President Bush went to the site and stood out there and led. A few days later, he goes to throw the first, they were going to cancel I think it was the World Series they were in. Let me think here. No, not the World Series. There was a game, and it might have been a month later. Playoffs or something, and anyway, he threw out the first pitch. When the country was uneasy because they didn't know if we were going to have any more attacks, there was a lot of uncertainty. But he led. He stood in front of everybody and he calmed the country by being present. And it was amazing. Like, I can remember it. I remember having goose pimples in my body because of how he led. And he encouraged all of us in a time of need. And that's what good leaders do. Here's another one. Good leaders project positivity. Good leaders project positivity. Nobody wants to be around somebody who has stinking thinking. If you got stinking thinking, it drives you crazy after a while. Okay, so you want to be around people who have positivity. You really do. I mean, life's too short. We got to enjoy the people we're with and the time we have. So here's one for you. Rich DeVos, co-founder of Amway, and he's the chairman of the NBA Orlando Magic. He said this: 10 powerful phrases for positive people. So if you want to lead well, try to incorporate these into your leadership skills. Number 1, I'm wrong. A good leader admits when they're wrong. I'll give you a great example. Back, my Ball State team back, I think it was 1998 or 1999, so I'm dating myself. We had to win 2 of 4 games. We're at Western Michigan, and if we win 2 of the 4 games, we win the Mid-American Conference Championship. It was either our first championship or our second. And we had rain that had happened, and the game had been delayed. I had written out 2 lineup cards because I didn't know who Western Michigan was going to pitch. So I had one for a certain pitcher and I had one for another. I posted the lineup card in the dugout for the boys to follow. I handed the other card to the umpires. Unbeknownst to me, I handed the wrong card. So we're in the 4th inning in a 7-inning game. The score is 0-0. We already had lost game 1. If we lost this game, we'd have to win the next 2. It would be a lot of pressure on the team. And my hitter got a single, so we had a man on first. The next guy gets a single, and all of a sudden, my mentor, I went to Western Michigan, and my coach and one of my one of the most influential people in my life, Fred Decker, goes out to the umpires with the lineup card. And we had batted out of order. And basically what that meant is the guy had to go back to first. There was now 1 out, and we did not score in that inning. What I did in that moment is I ran over, I called timeout, and I ran over to the bench. So I was on third base, and the visiting team at Western Michigan is the first base dugout. So I ran across quickly, and I told the boys, I gathered them all around me, and I owned it. I owned it. I said, guys, you have to bail Coach out because Coach will not be able to live with this if he costs you guys the championship. That's exactly what I said. And we won that game. Those boys won that game 1-0, believe it or not. But leaders, and I don't say this in braggadocious, but leaders lead. And you got to own it when you're wrong. And you're going to be wrong. None of us are perfect. So we're going to be wrong. We're going to make mistakes, but you lead and you own it. 2 is you say, I'm sorry. Sorry is a powerful word. We kind of lost it in our society today. But it's okay to say you're sorry. It's a good thing. 3 is you can do it. I say this probably in my leadership style. I go up to players individual and put my arm around them and I whisper in their ear saying, you can do it. I believe in you. And the 4th one was, I believe in you. Ironically here. I do that all the time. All the time. You want to make more deposits into your people than withdrawals. More deposits than withdrawals. Deposits are something positive. You're building into somebody. Withdrawals is when you're taking something back. More deposits than withdrawals. That's what good leaders do. 5, I'm proud of you. 6, thank you. 7, I need you. 8, I trust you. 9, I respect you. And 10, I love you. Don't be afraid to tell your people, give them positives. Don't be afraid to do that. It builds them up. It builds your team up. Positivity. Good leaders have positivity. Number 4, develop foundational principles, or what in the business world some people would call core values. Core values. You got to have what your company is going to stand for. You gotta have a list of things. Like, for example, when I got into the coaching profession, Ball State had reached out to me. I was the assistant at Western Michigan where I played, and I thought I'd always be at Western Michigan. I thought I'd never leave. I'm a very, very loyal person, but I wasn't being paid full time, and we finally had a baby who's now my assistant coach who played for me here at Ball State, my son Alex, our son Alex. And I had to decide, Ball State had reached out and said, would you be interested in the job? I said, no. We're from Detroit. My wife's family and mine are both from Detroit. We figured we'd just stay there. I'd be a high school teacher coach. I'd coach baseball and football, teach English. And I was fine with that. Okay. My true desire was to be a college coach, but I didn't think we'd move. You know, if it was at Western, and then if not, I kind of didn't think beyond that at the time. As irony would have it, Ball State reached out a second time. And I told my wife, I said, I think it might be divine. We probably should go over there and take a look at what's going on there. So I had to put together a portfolio in preparation for the interview. And I'd never done anything. I'd never interviewed for any job. Any job that I ever had was because people liked me. It was never where I was competing against for something else. So what I did is a mentor of mine, and one thing, if you want to be a good leader, find somebody who can coach you up and mentor you on your journey. Someone who's a little bit older than you, has a little bit, seasoned a little bit, has some success, because those are the people you wanna learn from. That's why you see in coaches' trees, a lot of times the successful coaches have a lot of their assistants end up being coaches somewhere else, because they're part of a successful organization. So anyway, in putting my portfolio together, I was trying to think of what could I put that would draw attention to, so I could be able to share how I would run my program. And I had this mentor, Scotty Wilson, and Scotty said to me, he says, Coach, I know exactly what it is. Have you ever seen John Wooden's Pyramid of Success? And I said, no, I honestly haven't. He goes, you gotta look at it. He brought me a copy, and it was a pyramid, and it basically had all these attributes of people who are successful. You can look it up online and use some of it for yourself. But there were so many. John Wooden's a legendary coach. He won 10 national championships at UCLA. And more importantly, was known for a man of integrity, doing things really, really well. Businesses all around the world would want him to come speak to their organizations. That's how successful he was. And a lot of it stemmed from following his core values, which is the pyramid of success. Okay? So in mine, I don't have a pyramid of success, but what I do is every year I have a booklet of the things that lead to our success that I created on my own, that talk about things that we got to do in every facet of the game to be successful, but also about who we are. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you the foundations of our program, the heart of our program. Always be honest, no sugarcoating. I call it dirt honesty. So when you deal with your people, in my case it's dealing with my players, they're always going to know where they stand. You may not like it, but they're going to know from the coaches what the coach thinks right now. They can come in my office anytime and ask, but I'll have an answer. Okay? So no sugarcoating. Nothing replaces hard work. Have an and then some attitude. Work hard and then some. Encourage others. That's a foundation of our program. Be loyal to your teammates and your coaches. That's a foundation. Surround yourself with good people we already talked about. Whatever possible, help someone in need. Always think the best of others. Give thanks, put others first, love your family. Never forget those who helped you along the way. Be a difference maker. Always see yourself being successful. You control that. Don't let somebody else tell you that you can't do whatever it is that you're striving to do. You got to believe it stronger than anything else if you want to be successful. You got to believe in yourself. That's another reason why having a mentor will come alongside you and breathe into you and put deposits in you. You need people in your life to do that. And they'll help you out. They'll strengthen you. Exercise your mind and your body. And there is a great blessing in giving back with your time and money. Another secret of leadership, when you learn that you give not to get back, but you get back. That's the deal. When you learn to give of yourself and your resources, the great blessing is you actually get a blessing in return. And that's another art and a skill of leadership. Here's one thing. If you only get one thing out of this class from me speaking to you, DYDWYSYWD. So I had a mentor of mine put that in front of me, and he said, well, what does this mean to you? And I said, nothing. He said, I don't know what that means. I had no idea what that meant. And he said, look at it again. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he said, did you do what you said you would do? Good leaders do what they say they're going to do. Come on, man, we're watching in our country right now. There's not a lot of people doing what they said they were going to do. Am I right or wrong? If you just look around. Well, why don't you guys be the difference? Why don't you have a different mantra? Why don't you guys be the leaders in our country that do what they say they're going to do? Wherever you're at, whatever community you're involved, add value to your community, make the place a better place by doing what you say you would do. To me, that was significant. I've never forgotten. Leaders have a great energy. You have to have energy if you want people to buy into you. If you don't have energy, you're not going to get a lot of people to follow you. You got to have that positive energy. You got to believe in what you're selling. You got to believe in what your vision is. And only you can portray that. Not everybody's the same. We're all different. So you don't have to be an extrovert to have energy. So if you're an introvert, and that's natural for you to be more quiet, then you have to surround yourself with some other people to get your message across. Or you got to be a good communicator by doing it in a different way. Your style might be different. So everybody's different, but everybody can lead and does lead to a degree. It just depends what kind of leadership style you have, and then you got to make it the best you can possibly be. Okay? So, for me, here's one for you. My Michigan team was playing #1 Vanderbilt. When they announced that we were playing #1 Vanderbilt in the regionals, in the NCAA Regionals, my team kind of went like this. And I was flabbergasted because we had been building to this moment where we get this great opportunity to prove that we belong. And so for me, I looked at it out of my lens, what an opportunity, man. We're playing #1 team in the country. I love it. I love it. We're on national stage and we're playing #1 team. But my guys felt like they got kicked in the teeth. We were a really good team and they knew they were a good team, but our energy level wasn't where it needed to be. So we had practice after they announced the selection show and they announced this, we normally would go over to my house and have a big cookout. Instead, because we got 2 and barbecued in the Big Ten tournament, meaning we lost both games after winning the league by a big amount, being the best team, but we got, at our home field, we got smoked. So now that the guys are down, I decided we got to practice because our pitchers didn't get enough time to practice over the weekend. Because we weren't playing. So now we gotta have practice. They weren't happy with me. So I felt we were down. So then all of a sudden I pulled them all aside in a Miracle on Ice. It's a movie from the USA hockey team in 1980. Probably the greatest sports achievement that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime was the USA hockey team, college kids, beating the Russians, who were all older professionals and the best hockey players in the world. And our young guys actually beat them. Well, interestingly enough, in that movie, Herb Brooks, the coach, gets the boys together after a game and he has them do sprints after they already played a game. And he said, again, again, again. And he kept doing it. And he did it, 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 and he was wearing them out. And the trainer came over, he says, Herb, you gotta stop. Someone's gonna get hurt here. And he kept doing it. But the reason why he did it in the end was he was molding his team. He was seeing who had buy-in, who was all in, because they had to be all in order to beat the mighty Russians. The only chance they had. So he was molding his team. He took a risk. Well, I did the same thing. I had the guys at practice. I had running and running and run and run and run, and I never had to do it. I had a great team. And I told them boys, I said, boys, if you go down there like this, you're missing an opportunity right here. You've got one of the greatest opportunities in front of you. You couldn't have asked for more, but right now, you guys are surrendering. You give up like you can't beat these teams. I thought you were a team that could possibly take Michigan back to Omaha. And it was interesting. Either I was going to lose the guys in that moment, I told my assistants this, or I was going to win them over. Okay, only time would tell, based on the leadership that we had developed within the team. Would the team rally in that cry, or would they make excuses? That was the question. So we go down to Vanderbilt, and I'm in the hotel. We get busted into, I'm in the hotel, and I find on the shelf soap. The brand, believe it or not, said Energy. So I ran down to the desk. It was just I looked in the moment and I asked the people at the desk, could you get me a whole box of soap and shampoo with that Energy on it? And they went and got me a whole box. I went on the bus and I threw the box all down the aisle, and I said, you guys lather yourselves up. You guys get ready, because you gotta bring the energy now. We gotta turn it on right now, and you guys can do this and you can beat these guys. Believe it or not, we beat them not once, but twice, and we won that regional. Knocked off one of the greatest college teams in the history of college baseball, Vanderbilt, who nobody will ever remember, because we knocked them off. But on paper, the coach, Tim Corbin, would tell you it's one of his greatest teams. It was the greatest team he ever coached. But they didn't win. Okay? Leaders got to bring the energy. You got to bring the energy. You got to look at where your company's at, where your situation's at, and you got to figure out, how do I get people to elevate the game? And so coaching and leadership's all the same. Number 6, leaders get their teams to buy into being great teammates, so everybody's pulling in the same direction. If you come into Coach Maloney's program, every single player who comes in has to read the book, The Hard Hat by John Gordon. The Hard Hat is 21 reasons, basically, to be a great teammate. When you guys are leading your company, someday somebody in here is going to be a CEO of a company, most likely. Let's just say one of you guys get. Or you're going to run your own business. The only way you're going to realize your full potential is if you have buy-in, which we've talked about. You have to get your people to work together as a team, because together, collectively, we're greater than any of us individually could possibly be. You guys understand that? So the energy from all of us is better than any one of us. So we've got to get guys to play as a team. And The Hard Hat's a good book, so it sends the message to the rest of the group. This is how we do our business at Ball State. Okay. Number 7, good leaders encourage others. There's this guy, Jack Crusella. I love this. I can't even believe this. This guy, for me, is a kind of like, I don't even know him. I've never met him personally. But he's kind of like an unspoken hero, because he's figured this out. Jack Crusella was the president of Trust in Us, LLC, formerly the co-founder, CEO, and president of Decision Consultants, the largest privately held professional information technology services firm in America. He sold it to Cyber Incorporated in a long time ago, in 2002. Jack started his company in 1976 and grew the company from one person to 150 plus million in revenue, 1,800 plus employees. Okay, now here's what Jack did for me. So I'm coaching at Michigan, and I would get letters from Jack. Don't even know him. He found somebody, being me, in the position that I held, and he knew I had influence with the youth, young leaders. And so he would send me things of encouragement. And I don't even know the guy. That guy's figured it out. So he made me better, and I'm passing some of Jack Crusella to others in my career many times over, and he doesn't even know who I'm affecting. But because he wanted to add value, and he knew leaders have a chance to add value to more because of the platform that I had and I have, and so he would send stuff. So here's one I just told real quick. This guy's Ben Carson. Some of you guys have known about him. He actually ran for president for 2 elections ago, or one of them. And Ben came from the inner city of Detroit. Bad situation, horrible situation, fought his way through and became this great surgeon. So he was the director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital from the inner city of Detroit. Everything against him, and he rose up and made it. So this is what Jack said. He tells the story of this, and he sends me, Ben Carson said this: success is determined not by whether or not you face obstacles, but by your reaction to them. And if you look at those obstacles as a containing fence, they become your excuse for failure. If you look at them as a hurdle, each one strengthens you for the next, and nothing can stop you. So guess what he accomplished in his life? Like he ended up being the director, like I told you, at Johns Hopkins, probably the greatest hospital in the country. And then here it is. He performed the first successful separation of Siamese twins joined at the back of the head in 1987. The first completely successful separation of type 2 vertical Siamese twins in 1997 in South Africa, and the first successful placement of some kind of shunt for some other kind of twin. So here's this guy from Detroit, had no hope basically, fought his way through a very tough system, and became this great person. But Jack says this, he gives you stories like this, he says, make it a great February. Coach, continue to have impact on people. And he didn't have to send it to me, he doesn't even know me. Think of that. That's living large. Here's another one for you. Let's go to number 8 here. Good leaders demonstrate servant leadership. Servant leadership. I'll give 2 quick examples. Seth Vaughton was my third string catcher. He's never going to play. Never going to play. He wasn't really talented enough to be a great player for us, so he's a backup. So guess what he had the great job of doing every single day? Catching bullpens. If you know anything about baseball, catching bullpens is it's not easy. You got guys throwing over 90 miles an hour, the balls are bouncing in the dirt, you're taking them off your chest, and you're getting no glory for it at all. And he knew he wasn't going to play. But every day, Seth Vaughton came to the field with a great attitude and a smile on his face. And after every bullpen that he caught to serve his pitchers, he shook their hand and encouraged them. So he batted 7 times in the year when we won in, I think it was 2014. He batted 7 times and he got 3 hits. He batted 7 times. Now, when he came up to the plate, guess what? Because of how his attitude was and how he treated everybody, the entire team rose up from their dugout seats to the front of the dugout to cheer on Seth. So even though he wasn't a star on the field, he was a star with the boys. In the greatest, when I gave the championship rings out for winning the championship that year, the greatest ring I gave out, barring none, was the moment I got to hand Seth Vaughton his ring. Because he understood servant leadership. And I told Seth, I said, Seth, if you carry on this in the great game of life, you'll be whatever you want to be. If you want to be a CEO of a company, you'll be a CEO of a company. Whatever it is that you want to be. Because people are always going to want you on their team, and you're going to rise up because you got the right makeup. You got it figured out way ahead of your time. Brian Bullington, number 1 pick in the entire baseball draft. Ball State's greatest athlete, barring none, in the history of Ball State. Probably ranks amongst the best athletes ever in the history of the Mid-American Conference. First player picked. First player picked in the whole draft. Think of that for a minute. If it was today's day and age, we'd be on national TV. Back in the day, they didn't celebrate it as much. Brian Bullington pitches in his last year before he's the first pick in the draft. He gets shelled by Kent State in the Mid-American Conference tournament. We lose 13-3. We're talking the greatest athlete, in my humble opinion, in the Mid-American Conference in college, and definitely the best pitcher of the year, 2 years in a row. But he loses in that game. 2 days later, he begs to pitch in the game as our team fought its way through the losers bracket. He's risking $4 million because if he pitches on short rest and he blows out his arm, he's going to lose all that money. He doesn't care. He doesn't care because he cares more about the team than he does about himself. Think of that for a minute. Today's day and age, you got guys in bowl games, they don't even play. They sit out. That's foreign language to Brian Bullington because Brian Bullington was a servant leader. He cared more about his teammates than he did about himself. He said, Coach, I can't leave Ball State like this. I let down my team. Servant leadership. Good leaders are servant leaders. Now we're in the last thing. Here you go. Close this thing up. Good leaders pay attention to detail and they don't settle. Good leaders pay attention to detail and they don't settle. Okay? And so what I mean by this, when you're a good leader, every little thing matters. So you got to train your people that and they understand that. Okay, because when you don't pay attention to those details, guess what? They slip through the cracks and then they become a bigger thing later in a negative way. It's an attitude. We talked about having a great attitude. So in other words, if you're a company and I'm running a company, if I were running a company and I found trash on the floor there, I would pick it up and put it back. I'll give you a great example. Red Berenson, he was a famous hockey coach, coached in the NHL, but he coached at the University of Michigan. Legend, absolute legend, national champion coach, great hockey player in his own right, professional hockey player, all-star player. If you went into Michigan's hockey locker room, any day when he was coaching, pristine. Pristine. And if it wasn't pristine, the captain might not be the captain. I'm talking pristine, man. You walk in there, it is like everything was exactly detailed. And guys who win, people who win, leaders who win and are successful, they pay attention to details. They don't leave things for chance. They control the things that they can control with a good attitude and a great team around them. And they train their people that's the mentality our whole company has. So all those little things matter, okay? Now I'm going to say, don't settle. I'm going to share for those of you who are from the state of Indiana, who understand auto racing better than I do, as I'm a Michigander, but an adopted Hoosier. With that being said, Dale Earnhardt's famous race car driver. Dale Earnhardt and Ned Yost was the major league manager of the Kansas City Royals when they won the World Series. And Ned Yost was one of my coaches when I was a minor league player. And Ned told this story. He was really good friends with Dale Earnhardt. And this is what the story was. So 1994, I believe, was the strike-shortened season. And Dale Earnhardt and Ned Yost being such good friends. So there was no World Series. I believe it was 1994. Don't hold me to that date. With that being said, Dale Earnhardt called Ned Yost and said, "Hey, Ned, I know you love race car driving and all that. Why don't you come join my team and be in the pit for the rest of the Winston Cup Championship Series for auto racing?" Okay? They get down to the point where they're down in the last race, and all that Dale Earnhardt has to do is finish fifth. If his team finishes fifth, they win the Winston Cup. So the chief, who has the headphones on, says to Dale as they're running the race, they're racing cars, and they're going through the race, and they're going through laps and stuff, don't push it. Dale, don't push it. We're sitting pretty. Just stay right there, and we're all good. We're all good. We're going to win the Winston Cup. Gets closer. They get within the last 100 laps or whatever. I don't know how long it's to be exact. But nevertheless, they start getting closer to where it's getting going. And Dale hollers in. He says, "Hey, I'm coming into the pit crew. Tell them I need whatever I need." "No! Don't do that, Dale. Don't be pushing it. We're all good. You're sitting pretty. Everything's perfect. Tell the boys I'm coming in right now. Get them ready." He comes in there, and guess what? They fire him up, and he gets out there, and now he starts pushing that car. He starts pushing that car. So he's going from wherever he was at. He's moving up the food chain, and he's pushing it, and the crew chief saying, "No, Dale, don't push it, because if you push it, the car breaks down or something, now they lose the Winston Cup." And he doesn't have to push it. He doesn't have to take that risk. But here's what Dale Earnhardt was. He was a winner. Dale Earnhardt never settles for nothing less than the best, whatever that is. That's why they're the Dale Earnhardt racing team. That's why they're great. Because he never settled. He never settled. So he pushes it. Lo and behold, they win the race. They win the race. When he gets out of the car, the big celebration, all that, he's mad. He's fired up. So he's not happy. They just won the Winston Cup, and he won the race. He's mad. And here's why he's mad. So he pulls his whole crew team together, gets them all aside. He says, "Hey, You guys were willing to settle for less than the best. Dale Earnhardt's racing team never settles. We always play to win. We always play to win. Our standard is here. And if that car would have broke down, so be it. So be it. But we play to win. There's a guy who paid attention to detail. There's a guy who has a high standard and expects all those people around him to hold up to that standard. So here in a joyous moment it could have been for him, he was teaching. This is the expectation. This is the vision. This is who we are. Don't settle. So my challenge to you guys is this. You have an opportunity. You're all at different stages in your life, and you have an opportunity to lead, to have impact. You don't have to be a multi-millionaire, but if you are, wonderful, good for you. But what you can do is impact people wherever you're at. Add value to people. That's living large and that's leading. So you have to decide what kind of leader are you going to be. What kind of leader are you going to be? I gave you some nine kind of keys to success, you could say, that if you incorporate them into your style, I promise you, you'll have a chance to be successful. I promise you. Because they work. They work. These are just things that if you practice day in and day out, you're going to be successful in the game of life. And you'll be a leader. And you'll have impact. Thank you for letting me speak to you. I'd be glad to take any questions that you might have. Do we still have a few minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any questions? Don't be afraid of me. I'll be good. Yes, thank you.
When I was younger, you had a player, Tank Howard. Is he still involved in the game in any capacity?
Okay, so Tank Howard I played against. He was the first round draft pick that Ball State ever had in their history. We've had 8 now. And Tank was picked either number 10 or number 11 in the first round. I was at Western as a player when Tank got drafted that year. And what a player he was. Last time I seen Tank is when I first came back my second tour of duty here in 2013. Out of nowhere, Tank popped into a practice. I immediately stopped practice, shifted gears, and had him speak to our team. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. He was a legend. He played about 10 years in the big leagues. Honestly, we've lost touch. I don't know. He hasn't been around the program. I know he's from the Cincinnati area. Don't know, but he hadn't been back since. But I will tell you that that was impactful when he popped in out of nowhere. Thank you for the question. How about somebody else? Yes.
As a leader, how do you address conflict?
Good point. Now, here's one thing. You got to have thick skin if you're going to be a leader. You got to have thick skin because you're always going to have naysayers. There's always going to be someone trying to pull you down. Okay? That's why you got to surround yourself in your inner circle with people who are inputting in your life that are encouraging you, building you up. Even as the leader, you build them up, but they also support you. They're on board. Loyalty is a really important thing with the people that you have around you. If you're going to be a good leader, you got to identify people who are going to be loyal to your vision because you need them. So when you have conflict, how do you address conflict? Head on. Head on. This is something that I learned, and this isn't easy to do. Okay, so say you got a unsettling situation you got to deal with. Here's what a lot of people do. People who don't know how to lead, they procrastinate. They procrastinate. They let it sit there. By sitting there, guess what builds up inside of you? Not positive energy. More stress. Once you recognize that you have this problem, you go. Make that phone call, meet that person, ideally face to face is the best. And meet it head on. Meet it head on. The longer you wait, the more it builds up into you and the more angst you might have, and you might not even have all the facts. And then the conflict could become bigger. It's better just be dirt honest. Be dirt honest. Hey, this hurt me. Tell me your side of the story. Let me hear what's going on with that. I got to hear your side. I'll tell you a great here, I'll give you a great point on how someone handled leadership and taught me how leadership should be handled. Bill Scholes was the athletic director at Ball State. Bill Scholes brought me back here. I wasn't going to be coming back to Ball State. I never envisioned once I left, I love Ball State. But I was at the highest level. Okay, but Bill Scholes recruited me back and he was phenomenal. I have, in our locker room, it was white walls. There was nothing in the locker room. We didn't have many resources at the time. The program I inherited the program back again when it was bad. They only had 14 to 15 wins. So leaders, what they try to do in your first year, whenever you make positive change, you've got to try to create momentum, positive momentum. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to have graphics in our locker room that would be very apropos for when I bring a recruit in, they'd say, whoa, look at that. Kind of sharing our history. All those first round draft picks that Ball State's had, 8 of them. Wanted them up there. I wanted the championship rings that we had when I was coaching that we kind of lost sight of to revisit to say this is where we're going back to. We're going to start winning again. So anyway, I get this guy, because I didn't have the resources, I get this guy to do our locker room. But I did it all by myself. Because I knew if I went through the food chain, it would get shut down. So I took a stand. I had it done. Now, Bill Scholl, in his infinite wisdom, he wasn't happy that I did without telling him. But what he did do is the way he handled it. He called me up. He says, Coach, man, the team's playing great. It was our first year back, and they were terrible. The team I inherited was terrible. I'm talking last place. Picked last and bad.
Blake was on that team, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Blake was on the team. And we finished that year third. So we came from the abyss to third with the same kind of players, just changing attitude. With that being said, Bill looked, he knew what was going on in that locker room. He didn't say anything. He called me up and he just says, I think we need to meet at 8 in the morning on Monday when we get back. I knew what it was about because he had figured out what I did. And he didn't belittle me. He didn't, he just says, Coach, I just wish you would have went through me. And I said, your hands would have been tied and I wouldn't have been able to get this done. I took a gamble, I took a risk. And I knew at that time I had a lot of collateral because they took me, I come back from Michigan. So I said, forgive me later, type deal. And President Gora, who was a leader, she was the president here, she asked Bill Scholl, she said, Bill, how does it look in there? Bill told her, it looks great. It looks great. Did it cost us anything? Nope, Coach got it all donated. Okay. Then she said, do we have any kind of issue, gender equity issue or any other kind of issue? He goes, no, softball already has graphics in their locker room. So then President Gora said, then what are you worried about? But what Bill was conveying to me is, hey man, I'm with you. Just work with me, which is something that I needed to do. But I also took a calculated risk, and that's what leaders do. At times you gotta take calculated risks. And I was betting on this, but he didn't belittle me. He could have said, man, you should have done that, and called me out or whatever, and then he talked to me. And our relationship strengthened. And he was a great help. And why we got that nice field out there right now, that nice little stadium that we got, a lot has to do with Bill Scholl and his leadership skills. Somebody else got a question. You had
You said that you were a Detroit Lions fan. So when they hired Dan Campbell in that whole press conference that he did about people's kneecaps and all that, a lot of people say that first impressions are important, and I kind of think that was a bad first impression of him, just for kind of how a lot of people saw that it was embarrassing. Do you think that was a true statement? That
first impressions are very important, but I will say to you that first impression was actually, if you really look at, and now that you know who he is, grit, he wasn't meaning it in the sense of hurting somebody else. What he was meaning is that we're gonna be tough as nails, and when you come to play the Detroit Lions, you're gonna be in for a battle. That's basically what he's saying. He just said it by the way he said it, and the media ran with it. And sometimes as leaders, you're gonna be misconstrued too, just so you understand that. You're gonna say something and somebody else is gonna interpret it a different way. So as leaders, you gotta be able to handle that part of your conflict, understanding that. But you gotta stay true to who you are and what your foundations are. Dan Campbell was laying the foundation of we're gonna be tough. And he didn't even pull out the word grit at that time. Grit came as he developed his team. But yes, be very aware of first impressions are very important. Be very aware when you're starting a company or you're rebuilding a company that gathering momentum is very, very important. If you don't gather momentum in that first year and you don't show progress, then what happens is you lose buy-in. When you lose buy-in, it makes your hurdle greater to get over the top. Give you a great example with the Lions. So in that first year, they won like 3 games. Second year, they started 1-6. The city was panicking. They were wondering, is he the right guy for the job? This is a true story. But in the locker room, all the guys had already bought in. They believed. Even though they were 1-6, he had the guys still believing. Then they won all those games in a row. They finished like 9-8. And then the NFL started talking about a lot of they're moving in the right direction, and they haven't played Kansas City to open up the first game of the year this year, and we actually beat Kansas City, the Chiefs. So basically, what's very important, and you're a student in acknowledging this, is be very aware that when you're the leader and you're at the forefront, everything that you say is going to be interpreted one way or another. Also be aware that some of it's going to be interpreted the way that maybe you didn't mean it to be interpreted, but that's how people are going to run with it. The media loves to run with things out of context. They love that it's sensationalizing things. Just stay true to your foundation. That's why you got to have your core values, because you stay true to your core values and your people know your core values. You stay on that plan. Don't move off the plan. The last thing I'll share with you is John Beilein, the famous coach at the University of Michigan, basketball coach. We had come off, my baseball team at Michigan had come off of 3 straight Big Ten titles, and John was being announced as the new basketball coach. I see him in the parking lot, never met him before. He loves baseball, by the way. He's a diehard St. Louis Cardinal fan. Anyway, he asked me this question. He says, Coach, since you've been here for a while, what would you recommend? Like, what should I be, thinking in here as I go in? I said, here's the deal, John. They hired you for your system, for who you are. He was at West Virginia and doing a great job. And just stay true to your system. Because you're going to get a lot of outside influence going to try to pull you away from who you are in your system. Because everybody thinks they know what the answer is. But stay true to you. And he just stayed he kept it simple. He stayed true to who he was, and he built a program, and they were simply marvelous. And so that's all I have for you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Come out to a baseball game if you get a chance.